Hello, this is Josh Willie with Court Reserve, and this video is going to go over the process of importing members into your organization. First, I'll kind of go over what we need to get set up inside of Court Reserve prior to actually doing the import, and then after that, I will go over the actual import template, go over all of the different columns that are on it so you can better understand what information you will need to fill out and also how you will need to fill out that information. The main thing that we'll need to have set up inside of Court Reserve prior to actually doing the import is all of the memberships that we will be offering in our organization. The configuration of a membership is not going to be dynamic. So based on the configuration we have at the time of the import, that is going to be the configuration and setup of the membership that is given to the member during the import process. So we really want to make sure we have these memberships set up correctly, whether that be the start dates and the end dates, or making sure we have all of the different frequencies and prices for those frequencies set up and ready to go before we begin the import process. If you need any assistance with setting up your individual or your family memberships, definitely feel free to reach out to our customer success team by clicking the green button in the top right corner, and they will take a look at your setup and just make sure everything is good to go before we actually get started with the import process. So after you have all of your memberships set up correctly, we can actually get started with filling in the import template. All right, and this is going to be the first tab on the import template that we have. You'll notice here that we have a link to our article in our knowledge base, and this link here will be the link to this video. Once you have gone over both the import article and you have finished watching this video, we can begin to actually fill in the import templates tabs. So you're going to notice down here that besides the instructions, we have a family memberships and an individual memberships tab. We'll want to make sure that if a member is being assigned a family membership, we are putting them in the correct tab, and same goes for the individual memberships. We can't have both individual and family memberships inside of one tab. And I'll get started on the individual memberships tab because the family memberships tab is really only going to have 2 additional columns that we will need to fill in. Before getting started, I do just want to point out that for some of these fields, whether it be first name and last name, and for username, I will go over a few tricks to easily fill in these fields here if you don't already have that pre-selected from a previous software, for example. First, I'll kind of just go over these required fields, and then again at the end, I'll kind of go over some easy ways to, separate the first name and the last name, or to generate a username with the information that we already have. From here, you can see that on the top of this tab, you can see that all yellow columns are going to be required. So the first 2 here are going to be first name and last name. These columns will need to be separate. We can't have one column that has both the first name and the last name. And that is because these are 2 separate fields that we have inside of Court Reserve. The next column is going to be the email address. The email address is going to be required, I would say a large majority of the time. Typically, this is going to be okay if the players are within a family and the player without an email address is not the primary family member. Other than that, if we want to give the ability for a user to log in, more likely than not, we will want to have an email address for that account. Next, we are going to have a username field that is required for all individuals. So it's not like the email address where, there are some cases where we don't need it. Every individual is going to need one. And again, at the end of the video, I'm going to go over how we can quickly create usernames for all players that we have inside of this import template. The next column that is required is going to be the membership name. This is going to be the name of the membership that we have inside of Court Reserve, and the names will need to match exactly. So we can't have an additional space. We can't have an additional S at the end of the membership name on the Excel sheet. We need to make sure that these names are going to match exactly with what we have inside of Court Reserve. If we don't have a membership name that matches, this player is going to be skipped in the import process. So we really want to make sure that the name on the Excel sheet is matching the name that we have inside of Court Reserve. From there, you're going to notice that we have 3 blue columns here. And these are only going to apply if the membership we are giving to our players has a fee. So if these are free memberships that we're giving to all of the players in this import template, we won't need to worry about these 3 columns. But if there is any type of price that's associated, one, we'll need to make sure we are listing the membership start date. This is going to be the date that this membership becomes active on the player's account. So if we want them to be active immediately after this import, we can always put the current day that we are working on this import template. And then from there, once they're imported, they're immediately active. And then we'll want to fill in the next payment date as well. This is going to be when the next billing cycle of their membership is due in your organization. So if we're importing members from, a previous software and they have already paid their membership dues for this year, we can put a future next payment date so we can sort of tell the system that these players are not responsible for paying for this membership immediately, but we can have it align with when their previous membership dues would actually end. If we need to charge them immediately, we can of course put the current day here, and then once the player is imported into the system, the membership will be assigned to their account, but they will have this membership due that they need to pay for. The last thing that we'll need to fill in is the membership frequency. This will need to be a frequency that is currently set up on the membership during the import process. So if we are offering monthly memberships, we'll want to put monthly as the frequency. If we have a quarterly membership, quarterly. If we have a annual membership, we'll want to put annually. And if we are doing a one-time price membership, we'll want to make sure we put lifetime here. We will need to have these membership frequencies match with the label that we have in this import template, because that is how the system is going to pick up and match the frequency for this membership. One thing that I do want to point out in terms of setting up these dates here, the membership start date is going to be the day that the player's membership is active inside of Court Reserve. And a player cannot book a reservation or register into an event until their membership is active. So if I have a future start date, I'm not going to be able to register into an event in the future until my membership is active in the system. So when we're thinking about the start date, we want to make sure we consider when these players should be able to begin booking reservations and registering into events. So now that we've gone over all of the required fields, I'll kind of briefly go over all of the optional fields that we have here. We have the gender. I will go over family ID and family role when we jump over to the family memberships tab. And then we have the member number. This is going to be that unique identifier inside of Court Reserve. We can leave this blank if you don't already have a member number for these players. If this field is blank, the system will auto-generate a member number for them. If we scroll over to the right, if you have a player's phone number and you'd like to import that into the system, or their date of birth, we can fill that in as well. We want to make sure we sort of stay consistent with the formatting that we have on this import template. And then we have the address for these players if you want to have that information imported as well. Then we have these two optional columns all the way to the right that I do briefly want to touch on. The first one here is going to be rating. So if we have some custom ratings that we want to import onto these players' accounts, we can do that. But similar to the membership, we want to make sure that we have these custom ratings already created inside of Court Reserve, and we want to make sure that the values we are giving to these players are already created inside of Court Reserve. And then we have any balance forwards or balance credits that need to be given to a player's account. The main thing I just want to point out here is if we add a positive number here, that's going to be the amount due on a player's account. But if we put a negative number here, that's going to be the amount of account credit that is imported onto this player's account. So that goes over the required and the optional fields that we have on the individual memberships tab. I am going to jump over to the family memberships tab because there are just a few differences, but they are big differences that we need to consider when we're filling out these players' information. So if you jump over to the family memberships tab, you're going to notice that we have two additional required fields here, and that's going to be the family ID and the family role. Even though they're required on this tab and they're optional on the individual tab, this does not mean that players under an individual membership cannot be under a family. It just means that, of course, if we are assigning a family membership, these players do need to be assigned to a family during the import process. But everything I'm about to say here in terms of formatting will apply on either of these tabs. So when we're talking about family ID, this is going to be the ID number that is assigned to the family. So if I have multiple players that are in the same family, I want to make sure that all of those players have the same family ID. So we can see here John Doe, Jane Doe, Arnold Doe, and Amber Doe all have the family ID of 1 because the 4 of them are all within the same family. So this is going to be a number that is unique to the family, and we'll want to make sure that all players within that family have a matching family ID. The second tab here is going to be the family role. So we have 4 different roles you can choose from. We have primary, spouse, other adult, and child. We do not have a way to edit these names or give them custom names. Those are the only 4 options that we have inside of Court Reserve, and they are required when we are creating or adding players into a family. So this will also be a required field. So that will go over all of the required and optional fields that we have on our import template. The last thing that I really want to point out before I go over some tips and tricks to easily format our information in this way is we are requiring all organizations to send in a sample import template prior to giving their entire member list. This is a great way for you to get some feedback from our team and make sure you have all of your formatting correctly before you add those hundreds or thousands of members to this list. So once you feel like you are ready to start adding some players into this template, feel free to add 5 or 10 players to these tabs here and send it over to our customer success team. So that way our team can take a look and confirm that you have all of your formatting correct. All right, so now for some easy tips and tricks to easily get your information formatted the way that we need it for the import. Let's say we have our members already added into an import sheet, but we have the first name and the last name all in one column. A way that we can easily separate these names is by going to Data on the toolbar, going over to Text to Columns, and from there we will want to select Delimited. When we are selecting our delimiters, we need to pick the character that is sort of separating the first name from the last name in this column. So if you have last name, comma, first name, we can select comma here. Or in my case, I just have a space between the first name and the last name. So I'm going to pick space here. Once I have selected space, I can hit next, and we can hit finish. When I click OK, we can now see that my first name and my last names have been separated on this Excel sheet. The next thing I want to go over is how we can easily generate usernames for all players on our member list. We can just click on one cell here. We can go to formulas on the top bar, and we can select the text option. From here, we will want to select concat. So from here, what we can do is we can sort of build out this username using fields that we already have in other columns. So for example, in text 1, what I can do is I can say that text 1 should be from cell A2, text 2 can be a period, and then text 3 can be from B2. When I click done, that's going to give me the username of John period Doe. And then if I want to apply this to all players on my list, I can just go in the bottom right corner, drag down, and from there, I'm going to easily get usernames created for all players on this list. All right, so that goes over our import process. Once you have that member import list finished and ready to go, you can send that over to the customer success team. Once they have taken a look at everything and made sure the formatting in the information is correct, they will go ahead and continue with actually getting those players imported into your organization. If you have any questions along the way, always feel free to reach out to our customer success team by clicking the green button in the top right corner. And if you want to look over the member import article at any point, we do have the link directly to it on the import template, or you can of course go to our knowledge base in the top right corner and find the article there.